Hey, we made it to the weekend. Welcome to Good Day Arlington, live on NBC Sports Chicago. I am Howard Sudberry along with Alyssa Ali, and we're here for, 21 more weeks?
21 more weeks.
21 more shows live on Saturday morning from 11 to 11:30. And we are live from Arlington International Racecourse. It's a beautiful studio that we have built here. And the place will be alive beginning next Friday on May 4th when Arlington opens. And it marks the 91st season for Arlington. It opened in 1927. And then, of course, the next day, the first Saturday in May, is Kentucky Derby Day, Alyssa. We're ready for that.
We really are, Howard. It's just become such a tradition here in Chicagoland. You don't actually have to go to the Bluegrass State in Kentucky to enjoy the Kentucky Derby. You see the ladies dressed up, the men dressed up. It's really a fun party. A lot of mint juleps flowing as well. So it's a lot of fun, and it's really like a big party. People have parties at their homes, but Arlington or Churchill Downs is definitely the place to be.
Yeah, people drink a mint julep whether they like them or not on Kentucky Derby Day.
Yeah, I don't.
You don't, but you'll still drink
one. I don't know. I know to both.
I think you'll probably pop one. And we're talking about the Kentucky Derby being a party, but for people in the business, for owners and trainers and jockeys, all they think about is this race and the dream of trying to win it.
And that's exactly right, Howard, but dreaming of it, but you think it's a lot of money, right? Oh, you've got to have a lot of money to win the Derby. You're going to figure it out. Money does not buy the Derby.
No, it helps. I mean, if you've got millions of dollars to spend, but you can't buy the Kentucky Derby. And speaking of money, this has got nothing to do with Arlington, the Derby, or anything right now. But I read this week, Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is building a home in Washington, 27,000 square feet, 5 living rooms, 191 doors, and 25 bathrooms. What in the heck do you do with 25 bathrooms?
Sounds like a hotel.
It does sound like a hotel.
This guy sounds like maybe he should be buying some racehorses. 27,000 square feet, a little much.
He should have 250 racehorses. But as we said, even with that, even with those kinds of numbers, the odds of winning it are astronomically against you. But there's a jockey by the name of Calvin Borel. His nickname?
Bo-Rail. Calvin Bo-Rail. He's known for getting those horses up on the rail.
He puts them right against the wood, and I visited him. He had a streak where he won 3 out of 4 Kentucky Derbies, and I talked to him about that experience and about what it's like to ride in the big one. What's that day like? I mean, just riding. When you go out there and see 160,000 people and hear that roar, people in the hats and the mint juleps and everything about the Derby.
It's unbelievable. I mean, it's like, the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just like a Super Bowl. I mean, you go out there, and the only thing about different this is just you and your horse, and you have one shot, one shot a year to win this race, and believe me, it's a lot harder than people think, and you would not imagine the feeling you have when you do win it.
Mind That Bird was 50 to 1. You see him there. Alyssa, I wanted to ask you, he won 3 in 4 years. Do you know, I mentioned Mind That Bird. Do you know the other 2 he won on?
Definitely Mind That Bird, obviously.
Yes, I just told you that.
Super Saver.
Yes.
That's it.
And Street Sense.
Street Sense.
And then that was
2007.
That was from 27 to 2010. Who was the other one in there that he didn't, in that 3 out of 4 that he didn't ride?
What?
That won the Derby.
What are you talking about?
He
Ask
won,
the question again.
He won 3 out of 4 years.
Correct.
He didn't ride one of those.
Oh, gotcha.
So who was the other horse?
I don't know.
It wasn't Gotcha. It was Big Brown. Anyway, I digress. Let's talk about sports right now. And we're going to get an ESPN Sports Center update from our friend down at the ESPN 1000 studios. And let's go down to Fred Hubner.
Ryan Pace added 2 more pieces to the Chicago Bears roster last night, selecting offensive lineman James Daniels from Iowa and wide receiver Anthony Miller from Memphis. The NFL draft wraps up today as the Bears have 4 more picks. At Wrigley Field, that was more like it from Yu Darvish as the Cubs hurler went 6 innings, allowing just 1 unearned run. Cubs beat the Brewers 3-2. Chris Bryant missed his 4th straight game, recovering from getting hit in the head last Sunday. He could return this afternoon when Jose Quintana takes the hill at 1:20. In Kansas City, Matt Davidson owns Kauffman Stadium. The White Sox DH belted 2 more home runs, including a 2-run shot in the 10th. White Sox beat the Royals 7-4. Davidson has 7 of his 9 home runs this season at KC's home stadium. Teams play a day-night doubleheader today, and in soccer, the Chicago Fire face defending MLS Cup champion Toronto FC north of the border at 2 o'clock. From the ESPN 1000 Sports Desk, I'm Fred Hubner.
All right, Fred, thanks a lot. And we want to connect with everybody on social media, Alyssa.
Absolutely, Howard. Get to Twitter now. We're asking you a question, and we're going to talk about it later on in the show. What would you name your racehorse, especially if you thought he could win the Kentucky Derby and be recognized in racing history forever? Tweet at Arlington_Park to let us know what your horse's name would be. I'm pretty excited to hear these ones.
And there have been some interesting names over the years, and we want to know who's going to win next week, next Saturday, the Kentucky Derby. We're going to take our first break right now on Good Day Arlington, and this portion of Good Day Arlington is brought to you by Tito's Handmade Vodka. When at Arlington, try the ultimate Bloody Mary made with Tito's and get the upgrade. Tito's, the preferred vodka of Arlington. Up next, NBC Sports' Randy Moss, part of the Derby broadcast team on what we might see next Saturday.
Randy, what did we learn this afternoon?
Hey, listening to Baffert, I think Arrogate will run in the Breeders' Cup Classic. But, boy, this is vintage horse racing, isn't it? I mean, at the end of March, Arrogate was being compared to Secretariat and Man of War. Now, as we sit here August 19th, knowing that the Breeders' Cup Classic will be run here at Del Mar, right now, Gunrunner is the favorite.
Agreed.
Welcome back to Good Day Arlington. And how about that? In August, Randy Moss predicted the winner of the Breeders' Cup Classic, who was Gunrunner, so that was pretty good.
That was pretty impressive.
I'm saying that as we lead into Randy Moss right now. I admire him as a broadcaster. He's very knowledgeable in horse racing and in the NFL, and we'll pick it up with Randy right now. Randy, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks for being so easily impressed with my August prognostication there. I appreciate it.
I hope he was a heavy favorite, but I hope you bet a couple of bucks on him too, Randy. Randy, how would you describe the Kentucky Derby to people that have not been there and experienced it?
It's a bona fide bucket list. It really
Yeah.
is. And to be honest with you, I mean, I'm not saying this just because I work for NBC Sports, but they've done a very good job in promoting the lifestyle aspect and the social aspects of the Kentucky Derby, as well as the sporting aspect. They've really put an emphasis on that the last 4 or 5 years. And I think now more than ever before, I hear people that I run into talking about how the Derby is on their bucket list. I think a lot of us have become big event-centric. I know I don't really pay that much attention to the NBA or to Major League Baseball until it gets into the postseason. I don't really pay that much attention to golf unless it's the Masters or the U.S. Open. I don't pay attention to tennis unless it's Wimbledon. And, you know, I think a lot of people are that way with horse racing. There's just so many options out there that, you know, they'll just really focus in on the big events in horse racing. And, of course, the Derby is the biggest of the big.
It absolutely is. Randy, you know, let's talk about the 2018 field as we're 1 week away. Do you think this is one of the more really competitive fields? I know we always say it's a deep field, but I'm looking at it, and I think critics are looking at it, handicappers are looking at it, that this is pretty competitive. What are your thoughts?
I think it's not only competitive, I think it's good. I mean, there are some standout horses in this bunch. There's a lot more depth, I think, to this year's Kentucky Derby, and in good depth than you can see before. I mean, there are different types of competitive races. We can see Kentucky Derbies in which it's competitive because there are no really outstanding horses. There's just a lot of good horses. This year, I think we've got quite a few potentially outstanding horses, and that's what makes it That's what makes it, so entertaining and something really to look forward to.
It's a week out yet, so I've always talked about, I don't know about you, but I changed my mind a lot leading up to the race. I think we all do. Everybody is so impressed with Justify, the winner of the Santa Anita Derby. To me, I know he ran really fast. To me, I'm a little bit skeptical. He beat 2 easy 5-horse fields when he broke his maiden, won his second race, and then he won the Santa Anita Derby pretty easy. So I think as a favorite, when he gets tested here, I might go against him. What do you think?
And didn't race as a 2-year-old.
And didn't race. He's only run 3 times. Yeah.
Right.
The not racing as a 2-year-old part doesn't bother me as much as what he hasn't experienced in the 3 races that he's had this year. I think you brought up a really good point. He's had relatively antiseptic trips in short fields. Is he the most talented and probably the fastest horse in the race? I would say yes. But when you combine his relative inexperience in crowded type situations with the fact that he's had a couple of his 3 races in which he broke from the gate just a beat slowly, if that happens in the Kentucky Derby, then that could really put him behind the 8 ball for a horse that's never experienced anything like that. As a favorite, and I think he's going to be the favorite, I think he'll be probably 5-2 or 3-1.
Mm-hmm.
For those reasons, I agree with you that from a gambling perspective, he's a good horse to take a shot against. And that's what we tried to convey on NBC, Jerry Bailey and I, in the immediate aftermath of the Santa Anita Derby. We were probably a little too harsh on him, to tell you the truth, because he did run a very fast race. But, he is a bet against, I think, from a gambling standpoint. A lot of big bettors have that in mind.
Randy, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about Mendelssohn and just European horses in general. Why do you think we're taking a look at the standouts? Maybe Mendelssohn, UAE Derby hasn't had much success as far as winners coming to the Derby. But what are your thoughts on European horses racing the Derby? And we've seen things not go so well essentially for them. Why do you think that is?
Well, a couple of reasons. They haven't been good enough, number one. Number two, most of them that have come over here have had turf pedigrees. The horses that have come from Dubai, by and large, haven't been good enough. Street Cry would have been an exception, and he had to be scratched right before the race, so we never got to see him run in the Kentucky Derby. Mendelssohn sort of breaks all those molds. I mean, he's bred to be certainly a dirt horse more than a turf horse, as a half brother to Beholder, and into Mischief. And, he also has the benefit of being good enough, basically, based on what we saw in the UAE Derby. He's a very, very talented horse. There's always, though, pros and cons. And I think the con here to Mendelssohn is twofold. Number one, I believe, and most of the jockeys that rode in Dubai on Dubai World Cup Day believe, that particular track that day was favoring inside speed horses. Okay. Regardless of the fact that Mind Your Biscuits came from way back in the sprint, you seem to see Speed and Rail have an inordinate edge. And so I think you have to downgrade his win in the UAE Derby just a bit because of that. The second factor I think that goes against him, and I say this with a little trepidation, jockey Ryan Moore, who may be the best jockey in the world. Now, I know a lot of people think that he is. He's been voted that internationally a couple of different times. But he doesn't have a lot of big race experience on the dirt, and a lot of times when you see Ryan Moore and some of these European jockeys come over here to ride in the Derby and in big races, they seem to be so concerned about changing their riding style from being, sit still, come from way back on turf, no speed out of the gate, which is the way European races are typically run. They overcompensate when they come over here for dirt races, and they will absolutely send horses away from the starting gate, especially in the Derby, and just they'll lose all chance.
Right.
Go back and watch a horse named Daddy Longlegs. I think it was Ryan Moore riding him. I'm not sure. He ran in the Kentucky Derby, and it was just brutal how hard he was ridden the first quarter of a mile. So to me, that's a disadvantage for Mendelssohn, is that he's got a rider who, while he may be the best in the world, is just not that accustomed to riding in major dirt races like the Derby.
All right, Randy, we're going to take a break, and we'll have a little bit more time with you after this. But this portion of Good Day Arlington on NBC Sports Chicago is brought to you in part by the Daily Herald, with home delivery available. And next, more with Randy on the 144th Kentucky Derby, and he also works for the NFL Network. So we'll ask him how he thinks the Bears did in the NFL Draft.
We've got good news. There's racing all summer long with some golden tickets on the line. The Breeders' Cup Challenge Series will be our focus tonight all the way into the fall.
This is the 11th season of the Breeders' Cup Challenge, which this year consists of 81 win-and-you're-in stakes races, 16 of which will be seen live on NBC or NBCSN. Challenge winners, of course, get a guaranteed starting spot in the Breeders' Cup, entry fees paid, and a travel allowance to get to the Breeders' Cup this year.
And we are back live on Good Day Arlington on NBC Sports Chicago. Howard Sudberry along with Alyssa Ali, and we are visiting with Randy Moss of NBC Sports. And Randy, I wanted to ask you, what makes the Derby so cool to me is that there are 20 horses. There's a mad scramble going into that first turn and out of the gate. How much does luck play in the race, do you think?
Way less, Howard, than people think.
Really?
It drives me crazy when I hear people try to make the case that the Derby should be cut from 20 horses to, say, 14 because the 20-horse field makes it a crapshoot. Drives me absolutely nuts. If you go back and you look at the winners of the Kentucky Derby, you go back to 1970, maybe just as far back as you want to go, and ask yourself, in hindsight, looking at that Kentucky Derby, was that the best horse in the race? Looking at it with the benefit of hindsight, it's amazing the percentage of times that you'll come up with the answer, yes, history has shown, subsequent races have shown, that that was the best horse in the race. I'm talking 75, 80%. So when you're talking about 20-horse fields making the race a crapshoot, that's a bunch of malarkey. The Derby has a way of separating the men from the boys because of the pace, because the Derby basically, with the big field, requires a horse that can accelerate enough to hit the holes when needed. The best horses typically win the Derby.
So I guess what you're saying is that you like a horse then that can make his or her own luck because they have the kind of speed and burst that they can get themselves in position to not get in trouble or get trapped and have a bad trip.
That's typically the definition of the best horses, the ones that have multiple gears, the ones that are adaptable to whatever pace situation might be thrown their way. And that's what you see in the Kentucky Derby, and that's why the best horse typically wins the Derby.
Randy, are you there in Louisville yet?
I'm leaving Monday, Alyssa. Sometimes I leave Sunday because I've been doing the NFL draft. I wanted a couple days at home to recharge and to pack.
Sure.
So I'm going to leave first thing Monday morning.
What are you going to look for when you're there then? Are you going to go out in the morning? I was looking at the weather to see it might rain a lot on Thursday. Do you guys keep an eye on the weather, see how they're training in the morning, and then start really making those picks for your on-air?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry Bailey and I have already been trading texts back and forth about the weather forecast and making sure we bring the same NBC rain jackets and things like that. We go out every morning and spend a lot of time on the backstretch every morning. We'll both compile a hit list of trainers and jockeys and sometimes owners that we want to talk to. We'll get as many of those out of the way on the back stretch as we can. A lot of walking, and then we'll work the phones. We've got a pretty substantial phone list, so we work the phones to talk to people the rest of the time. Because keep in mind, we're not only doing the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks, but Jerry and I will be doing probably a dozen undercard stakes races with some of the best horses in the country as well. So we've got a lot on our plate, and we're working on more than just the Derby and the Oaks, so it takes a lot of time.
So, Randy, what's your record been like in the Derby as far as picking winners? You're a pretty knowledgeable handicapper, obviously, but so how have you done?
Not all that great, Howard. Thanks for bringing that up. No, I liked, most recently, I liked Nyquist. I actually tried to beat American Pharoah. Jerry Bailey loved American Pharoah, thought he couldn't lose. My opinion was that the race was not going to set up well for American Pharoah, that it was going to be the toughest of the Triple Crown races for him to win, and that he was going to have to show something, do something that he'd never done before, and that's sit, 2 or 3 lengths off the pace, be outside, lose ground on the turns. It was going to work to his disadvantage. I was exactly right. All that happened, and yet he was good enough to win. Anyway.
So you never know.
You never know.
You never know.
We don't. We're out of time, but I want to ask you real quickly. The Bears took linebacker Roquan Smith from Georgia, and what do you think?
I love the Roquan Smith selection with Jarrell Freeman gone. They needed a good inside linebacker, and they got a really good one. They needed a receiver. I like the Anthony Miller selection. Yeah. James Daniels, perfect for the interior of the offensive line. I think it just continues what's been a really good offseason for Ryan Pace and the Bears so far.
All right, Randy, thanks a lot. Great visit, and we'll be watching you next week on NBC.
All right, Howard, thanks. Alyssa, take care, too. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Good luck picking the winner. All right, Randy Moss of NBC Sports. This portion of Good Day Arlington is brought to you by the official makeup and hair designers for Alyssa and I on Good Day Arlington, International Hair Designs in Lake Zurich. For more, visit internationalhairdesigns.com. And up next, what makes the Derby a one-of-a-kind race, and why is it so hard to win? And welcome back to Good Day Arlington on NBC Sports Chicago. Howard Sudberry along with Alyssa Ali. And I took a trip recently down to bluegrass country, down to Kentucky. And went down there and saw a lot of Derby horses that were already training. And I asked a lot of Derby veterans just why they think that so many people pay attention to the Kentucky Derby, even if they aren't hardcore race fans. And I also wanted to know, what's it take to win, and why is it so darn hard? Derby Day showcases the majesty of the horse, but it's so much more. It's a party, mid-juleps, it's horses and hats.
I think I've done the wrong thing now.
And for about 2 minutes, it's also hysteria.
It's so many things. It's a great sports event. It's a great entertainment spectacular. It's a wonderful social event, but it's also a great piece of Americana.
I think it's all great marketing, and it is a show. And if you look at the Derby, we've put something in there for everyone. Whether you're a supermodel that is not a fan at all, you get to come out and check the fashion and wear the hats and dress up. Or if you're somebody that likes to drink beer and hang out in the infield, they've got that for you. The Derby covers everybody.
But it all centers on the main event, the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. People have spent millions to get the right horse to win this race, but you can't buy it. It takes a combination of talent by horse, trainer, jockey, and luck.
It's an incredibly special thing. Some incredibly talented people have chased the dream for a lifetime, and they haven't been able to get there. And I think the aspect that it is so difficult.
Hall of Fame jockey and Churchill Downs legend Pat Day rode in 22 derbies. In '92, it finally happened. on a 16-1 shot. Little E.T.
You know, I've given a lot of thought to that moment. Tried to come up with the words that would adequately express or describe that, and there's only one word: indescribable. It was truly something that I think a person probably needs to experience firsthand to really understand the gravity of it.
Those famous twin spires have been a focal point of trainer Dale Romans his whole life. He grew up in Louisville. His dad was a trainer. He is Churchill Downs' all-time leading trainer with so many great horses, but a hole in his resume.
Yeah, when you walk over there and you see the twin spires, and I've been every place there is to be probably on Churchill Downs, almost every barn, every square inch of the, but there's one place I've never stepped foot in, and that's the winner's circle that the Kentucky Derby winners go in. You don't want to go through your whole career and not have won a big one. But it is hard. I mean, there's only been 100-something trainers that ever have won it.
That was obviously the highlight of my racing career. To win the Kentucky Derby, I think, is the dream of anybody and everybody involved in a great sport of horse racing.
And Pat Day, one of the greatest jockeys in history, Hall of Famer. He rode in 22 Kentucky Derbies, and he won one.
He won one.
But that's all it takes.
That's what he remembers, absolutely. Yeah. We asked at the top of the show what you would name your horse if you knew he or she was going to win the Kentucky Derby. We got some responses here that are pretty awesome. Manducate. Manducate. I don't need to be manducated, but that's a good one. From Carmine Gabagool, this is his or her first tweet ever, and that horse would be Throw It Out to make it easier on the handicappers. Nice. Jason said, thank you, my friend, and Mark said Bill Gates. So then Mr. Gates would pay him big money to buy into him. It's like, that's pretty fun.
It is. What would you name yours? I got one for yours. Because
Alyssa greater than Howard. What's yours?
You don't want to lie.
No,
I'm not. Your dad would train it. Mm-hmm. Your name is Ali, so I think you should name it the greatest.
The greatest.
The greatest of all time.
Let's check in with the track announcer John G. Dooley, though, for a sneak peek of next week.
Next week on Good Day Arlington, legendary Chicago Bear and horse racing enthusiast Johnny Morris joins Howard and Alyssa to discuss Chicago sports and the most exciting 2 minutes in sports. Plus, we take a look at mint juleps and Kentucky Derby tradition.
All right. Look forward to having Johnny on the set next week. Thank you for watching. We're here all summer long, 11 to 11:30 on NBC Sports Chicago. Have a great day.